It was my very first time in the Grand Canyon. True backpacking, backcountry backpacking in the Grand Canyon. Just thinking, where am I? What did I get myself into?
Grand Canyon National Park, one of the most awe-inspiring wonders of the natural world. 29-year-old Allison Redmond and her father Dennis are here to embark on an intense 5-day father-daughter hike to the bottom of the Big Hole.
My name is Allison Redmond, and I'm from Reno, Nevada. I love to practice yoga, and I love to rock climb. A friend just took me randomly one day saying that I was athletic and I thought I'd enjoy it, and I just kept going to the gym. My dad is super athletic. He'll just wake up at the crack of dawn to go hiking. He doesn't stop. The last time I tried racing him, I broke my arm.
Well, my name is Dennis Redmond, and I'm retired now. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have 5 children. Allison is number 4 in line. She's just very active, very outgoing, and always up for an adventure. So this was going to be, kind of a father-daughter adventure.
They start their descent from Monument Point on the North Rim. Having done this hike many times before, Dennis leads the group.
Go, kids.
Behind, his daughter Allison, their friend Scott, his daughter Samantha, and her boyfriend Nick.
The way we planned our hike was day 1, park at the trailhead, hike down about 5 miles to our first campsite.
Although an experienced hiker, Allison has trained hard for this, her first descent into the Grand Canyon.
As I was hiking, I was just amazed, just looking down at the canyon. It was just awe-inspiring. You have all these different shades of reds and hues of greens, and I was thinking to myself, like, girl, you fall. It's not only gonna hurt, but this is super precarious.
The Grand Canyon is anything but easy. It is a rugged place to hike. Rocks and ledges and whatnot. You never know what you're gonna step into.
After their descent, the group begins a demanding hike along the Red Wall, a trail that leads across the canyon to an oasis called Thunder River.
The Red Wall is a couple of miles, just treacherous, rocky. There were some little critters, some lizards. We saw some condors, and it was getting really, really, really hot. Easily 90 degrees plus, really relying on my poles.
I prefer to use walking sticks. It's nice for support. And if you ever decide to sit down, I always use my hiking pole to just kind of tap around the rocks. Scorpions, any other venomous type creatures could be crawling around. Thinking of things that may bite you is absolutely part of your plan.
I'm Dr. Emily Taylor. I'm a professor of biological sciences at Cal Poly. The Grand Canyon area in general is a biodiversity hotspot. This is a very, very, very harsh, hot desert. So you do tend to have a number of highly adapted species, including venomous species. There are centipedes down there, rattlesnakes, scorpions. There are these water bugs that inflict a painful bite. There are indeed a number of different things that are potentially lethally dangerous to a person if they bite them.
Then we start making our way towards Thunder River, is called.
It's incredible because you have this huge canyon wall and this little tiny hole where just water is gushing out of it.
You did it.
Taking off the pack, being underneath the shade, it felt amazing. Just a true oasis. That was my favorite place in the world at the time.
We're having lunch, we're making smoothies. It's just really enjoyable.
At this point, everyone had changed out of their hiking shoes and had put their water shoes on. We start looking at the waterfall, taking pictures of the waterfall. I see Sam and Nick is taking a ton of pictures.
All right, Nick, it's your turn.
I grab the phone, and I'm next to this bush. It's thorny and super, super green. And the whole time I'm taking pictures, picture after picture after picture after picture.
Okay, let me get a different angle, hold on.
And then that's when I took a couple steps, and I feel just this searing pain. A thorn, like, go in and come out, and I'm just stumbling forward and just like, what was this? It's like when you get alcohol in a paper cut, Just that kind of sharp, all of a sudden, just bam, pain. Of course, I'm gonna stub my freaking toe in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
You okay? Everybody's coming together to see what's going on.
Told them, like, I'm in a lot of pain. And then I took my shoe off and I looked down at my toe and the blood looked watered down. Definitely thought to myself, this looks weird.
Frankly, we didn't know what we were onto because there was just a single little puncture. Did she get poked by a stick or did she get poked by some other insect?
I had no idea what had injured me. No sights, no sounds, just the instant searing sensation. It was just a huge mystery.
Spearfishing, for me, it's the coolest sport in the world. You're in the water, you're holding your breath, trying to make as little disturbance as possible. Surrounded by all the life and just seeing all the beauty nature has. But if you want to catch fish, well, there's risks you're willing to take. I've been doing it my whole life. I guess it's bound to happen.
Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, famous for warm waters and sun-drenched resorts. A popular destination for fishermen from all over the world, like Houston native Jonathan Schoeneman, who has been fishing here since he was a kid.
My name is Jonathan Schoeneman. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and my mother is originally from Mexico City, so it was cool because I grew up in between Mexico and Houston. I grew up in the country, so my whole life was hunting and fishing and catching armadillos, anything I could catch with my hands. It was amazing. Being able to fish as a child and loading the boat with big Dorado, big white marlin, and catching not one, but a lot.
Travis Simmons is Jonathan's childhood friend and longtime fishing buddy.
He's always been like an older brother to me. We were always fishing and causing a little trouble, making a little ruckus in the neighborhood. Jonathan has always been like just a free spirit. He thrives for fishing and for adventure. And all he really cared about was like the next fish he was gonna catch.
It's 2016. Jonathan turns his lifelong love for fishing into a business selling his catch to local restaurants around Cancun. He convinces Travis to join him.
So I decided to move down to Cancun, and we had been fishing every day.
Weather was great for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden we had terrible weather for like a week and a half. So I was like, Travis, let's go to the lagoon. Let's go snook fishing.
On a breezy September afternoon, Jonathan and Travis head out to Nachupte Lagoon, an area home to many coveted species of fish, like snook, tarpon, and bonefish. But such bounty also attracts a host of predators. Jaguars, ocelots, and crocodiles frequent the region.
We fished for a couple hours and no luck, nothing. And I had that feeling that the fish were gonna be stacked up in this little kind of cove where it goes into a freshwater spring. So it's a perfect area for all life to be there.
We anchored off about maybe 30 yards from the tree line where the roots and the mangroves were. He's already changing, getting geared up, putting his weight belt on, snorkel, mask, getting his gun ready.
So I was like, well, let's get in the water. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
He's like, oh no, I've done this before, it's okay, you know, it's no problem. I mean, I've heard him say that before, and we find ourselves in situations.
When I told Travis,
If you want to catch the fish, you've got to become the fish.
There's warning signs everywhere. I mean, I love Jonathan like a brother, but sometimes he doesn't have the best ideas, but I didn't want him to have all the fun. So I decided to go ahead and make the plunge.
I didn't pay attention to Travis. You know, he stayed on the outside and I was going deep in the mangroves. It was one of those days I'll never forget how much fish were actually there. You go in and it'd be like schools of 40, 50 of them just swimming right by you. It was easy, just pull your gun back and aim and pick one out and shoot. Snook, you sell it directly to a restaurant, you can get 180 to 200 pesos. I just couldn't stop and kept on going, going, going. Obviously, when that's happening, I'm not paying attention to anything. I don't care what's next to me. Guessing I had 10, 12 fish. My string was pretty much full. I was going back to unload it. And my last dive, I didn't see anything, so I'm swimming out, coming out of the mangroves with the gun to my side, ready to take that first inhale of air. And right as I came up, inches from my face, The croc was staring at me. All I could see was the beak at the front of its mouth. And then, bam, got me face first. So, face first looking at Croc's mouth, like completely, I couldn't see anything, just a little bit to the left and right, out of the corners of my eyes. And I just felt like getting hit over the head and then putting in a vice, just crunching down harder and harder and harder. I'm guessing the crocodile was probably 12 to 13 foot long, 400 to 500 pounds. It was just a solid beast of a dinosaur, just massive.
The crocodile. 200 million years of evolution has turned this animal into one of Earth's most lethal hunters. This amazing creature can grow to over 15 feet long, swim 20 miles per hour, and hold its breath underwater for up to 60 minutes. Dr. Marissa Tellez is a biologist and director of the Crocodile Research Coalition.
When you are in crocodile habitat, the last thing you want to do is attract the crocodiles. For example, tying the fish on a line where it's wiggling and it's dying prey and it's going to attract the crocodile through these ISOs, the integumentary sensory organs. These are nerve endings that are around the crocodile's head as well as along the body. So likely the ISOs of the croc are just firing off and he's just going closer towards the dying fish. And Jonathan's coming towards him. And so as Jonathan's coming up, the crocodile kind of feels something closer. For all he knows, it's just a big fish and he clamps down on Jonathan.
I'm face on the croc, like completely looking down the barrel. Nose, everything perfectly centered inside his mouth. I remember the smell, if it just smelled of that dirty, rotten water, it really smelled of death. And just hearing the hissing noise and seeing the row of teeth and just the freckles in the throat. And then the crunching of my bones.
When the crocodile chomped on Jonathan's head, that was anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 pounds per square inch. And as Jonathan is struggling, that crocodile is actually gripping even more.
And then it rolled me. I was like, oh, crap. I let go of my spear gun, and I took my weight belt off, and I started bracing myself in the mud as it was trying to, like, it rolled me and it kept on trying to pull me under.
For an alligator or a crocodile, the death roll, it serves two purposes. It can either help take chunks of a large prey, or it could also be used to injure an opponent.
So it's crunching down on me. So you think, okay, I'm gonna go for its eyes. So I'm putting both hands up there. I was like realizing the size of its head, how big it was. Like I couldn't touch. So I'm feeling the eyes, and with both of my thumbs, I'm just gouging them in his eyes, and nothing was happening.
The eyes are a vulnerable spot on a crocodile that in some previous attacks, people actually punching the eyes of a crocodile or an alligator, the alligator or the crocodile will release. Unfortunately, in this particular scenario, the croc did not loosen its grip.
He's just biting down, and I can just hear the crunching, my teeth breaking. At the time, I thought it was the croc's teeth breaking. And he's just clamping down harder and harder and harder. And I'm seeing the water is normally this kind of dark tea color. And then I'm bleeding so much that it managed to actually turn red.
At an oasis deep in the canyon, Allison Redmond suffers a small needle-like wound in her foot, unsure how she got it.
Looking around, I was thinking it was a thorn from the bushes that were next to the creek.
There's a number of different things it could have been. It could have been a thorn in the plants. However, the Grand Canyon is in the middle of a desert. And so just like people who visit the Grand Canyon are going to be attracted to the river as a place where they can fill up their water bottles and cool off, so are the animals. The water in the Colorado River attracts tons of wildlife, including a number of different things that are potentially dangerous. But certainly If I was Allison, I would want to be thinking in my brain, that's probably a plant, because otherwise the actual implications would mean that I'm days from help and I've just been bitten by something that could kill me.
At that point, there was a lot of pain in my foot and my toe, and it looked a little swollen. Other people at the waterfall mentioned that they had seen something called a water beetle. And I guess these water beetles have a pretty nasty sting.
I think that the reason that the group thought it could be a water beetle is because there was a single puncture wound, which water beetles can do. There's a lot of lore about water beetles, that they're these crazy predatory beetles that walk around stabbing people. That's not necessarily true, but you know, it could have potentially stabbed her and gotten that sort of pain reaction, but it wouldn't have been that painful. They would never induce the amount of pain that she was in.
My foot is throbbing. It hurts so bad.
How does it feel?
I can do this. I think I'm gonna be okay.
But I didn't want to be a burden on the rest of the group.
This is where, when you're the father, ultimately whatever happens here, I'm gonna feel responsible. So I gotta start thinking, are we doing the right evaluation?
They give Allison basic first aid treatment, but with the day running out, it's vital that they get to their campsite, a strenuous quarter-mile hike away.
So we decided we're gonna continue our hike, because where we were at, definitely there was no way anyone's gonna get us out of there.
I knew that there's no way that anybody could carry me because of the kind of treacherous terrain. I was able at this point to still be able to put my hiking boot on.
Of course, I mean, for lack of a better term, interrogating her. What's going on? How you feeling? Oh, I can do this. I think I'll be okay. And she gets up on her hiking poles and she just kind of hobbled down. And she's not complaining per se at all. So that's sort of some of those indicators think, well, maybe she's hopefully going to be okay.
I can feel it swelling. I can feel it getting bigger. Every step I took not only was painful to put weight on, but also extremely heavy every time I picked it up.
Just never complaining, not as if, oh, excruciating pain that I can't do this, and no, I can go. I'll go down to the next campground. And it's just tougher than nails, this kid.
Allison keeps on hiking, so sounds like she was a really tough woman and wanted to just walk it off, which if it was a wasp or a water beetle or something, she indeed would have been able to. But as time progresses and the pain becomes really unbearable, this is the first signal that it probably was something more serious. And then as she continues to hike on it, even with the severe pain of her body is trying to tell her, don't put weight on this foot. See to this injury, take care of this injury. That's the purpose of pain in our bodies. By ignoring that, we're ignoring the signal from our body that something is seriously wrong.
Despite the escalating pain in her foot, Allison reaches the campsite. The group sets up tents for the night, still hoping this mysterious wound is nothing and she'll be better come morning.
My dad set up the tent. We had figured because of the irritation, just stay off your feet and fall asleep with your foot elevated. I hadn't clued anybody in that I was worried quite yet. I figured that if I let my dad know I was worried, he would go into full panic mode.
Well, I think that what she was doing was just putting up the tough girl front. I got this. She's getting concerned, you could tell, but she was not breaking down.
I'll be fine.
At this point, I thought that I was gonna wake up the next morning and hike the rest of the canyon. That night was restless. My leg was swelling. I was in a lot of pain. That's when kind of fear might have started to creep in just a little bit.
I'm sleeping next to her, but all night I'm awake listening for every move. Obviously, she wasn't sleeping very well. So now doubt's coming on. Am I making the right decision? Should I allow this to go on any further?
I wake up and I get out of my tent. At this point now, I cannot walk. The swelling had gone all the way up to my knee, just excruciating pain. It was definitely not a water beetle.
When Allison wakes up in the morning and sees that her foot is severely swollen 12 hours after the bite, the conclusion can only be drawn that this was a rattlesnake bite. Nothing else would cause those sorts of symptoms. And there is only one type of rattlesnake that occurs in this area, the Grand Canyon rattlesnake, Crocodile abyssus, so named after the abyss of the Grand Canyon that it lives in.
The Grand Canyon rattlesnake, a highly venomous pit viper found nowhere else in the world. It can grow up to 4 feet long. The perfectly camouflaged coloration and calm demeanor often allows it to escape detection. And unfortunately for Allison, Thunder River is the ideal hangout for such a highly evolved creature.
So within the Grand Canyon, Thunder River is an example of an oasis. It's a place that attracts people who are hikers in the area. It also attracts wildlife. Rattlesnakes are going to be feeding upon the rodents that thrive in areas where there's water, and indeed also just drinking from the water. And finally, sitting down next to the water, they're going to find a much cooler microhabitat than they might way up in the hot rocks in the desert. But Allison, not knowing that she had been envenomated by a rattlesnake, I think this really speaks to that she didn't see the snake. And clearly she wouldn't have thought it was a rattlesnake bite, because most people think that if it's a rattlesnake bite, there's going to be 2 fang marks. And indeed, there usually are. But sometimes only 1 fang can actually penetrate the flesh. This can happen for a number of reasons. The angle of the snake's bite, the size of the snake, and especially the fact that the fangs had to go through these water shoes. And even if it was in the back of her mind that it could be a rattlesnake, there's probably this strong denial by her subconscious that it could be, because a rattlesnake bite means your trip is over and let's hope for the best for your medical care and even your survival.
At this point, Allison and her father are still unaware of what bit her. They just know her injury is getting worse by the hour.
And I looked at it and I said, no, we're not waiting any longer. Call the militia, is the words I used, because that means we need help. And they go, well, maybe we ought to wait to see if the swelling goes down. No, we are not waiting any longer. This is it. Call in the help.
I'm just like, yep, I'm going. I gotta go. Let's make the phone call.
Within the mangroves of Cancun's Nichupte Lagoon, a crocodile crushes Jonathan Shoneman's head in its jaws. His friend Travis is spearfishing hundreds of yards away, oblivious to the life and death struggle.
I'm fighting. I'm starting to get physically exhausted. And then I remember crocs, they have a flap in their mouth, so they always close that flap when they eat. If you push it down, there's a ball of water and a gag and let you go. I reached in between my face and the mouth, slide it in there and punching it. I remember hitting as hard as I possibly could. Actually, my hands was completely bruised from sticking inside his mouth.
He starts punching at the palatal valve. And the palatal valve is similar in a sense to the lips of a human. It prevents water from going in, and it's another sensitive area. Many times the crocodilian, the alligator or the crocodile, will let go. If you pulled down the palatal valve, water would rush in and the alligator would let go.
As I'm reaching down his throat, punching it, and that vice is getting tighter around my jaw and trying to push the flap down, and that didn't work. This whole time, he's kind of pushing me back to the mangroves, and a second later, like corner of my eye, I noticed a branch from the mangrove. I managed to break the branch, started hitting the croc on the head. I was completely on adrenaline. I had the biggest adrenaline high ever. I mean, to snap that branch, and it was a big branch. On my head, think about it, I'm in a vice. I'm just hitting myself like as hard as I could, just over and over and over. And finally let me go.
So when Jonathan had the branch and started knocking at the crocodile might have finally just gave up, just simply because it might not have had the greatest grip on Jonathan, given that Jonathan's head was in the front part of the snout.
And that relief. And then I just looked down, I could see all the blood, everything, my teeth dangling, everything is mangled. And then he went back into where it came from. I went the other way, and I was swimming back. I went back yelling, gargling noises because my jaw was completely split in half and dangling. So I'm just making this weird noise.
My head is partially submerged. My ears are below the water level. But I started to hear this like kind of muffled scream. just over and over again screaming. And I see him coming out of the mangroves, just covered in blood, and his jaw hanging down to his chest. And it looked as if Wolverine had just went like that to his skull.
You know, I could see his face, like that shock, like what the hell is happening? You know, he just charged right to me to come get me. No hesitation.
I turned him around to his back, put him on my chest, and like start kicking back to the boat as hard and fast as possible, because I didn't know if that croc was coming for us to finish the job.
Travis pulls his friend Jonathan into their boat. The damage from the crocodile attack is extensive.
I start checking him, making sure that his main carotid artery had not been severed. And I know I have to stop the bleeding. I know we got to get out of here, and I know that I have to find help.
Took his shirt off and wrapped it around my face, pulled the anchor. And I was like, his is literally his first time in the lagoon. So I was guiding, you know, hey, just go here, like showing him where the marina to go. And I'm holding my face and the shirt just dripping blood everywhere.
The boat's just a mess, and it just looked like a murder scene. And I kind of land the boat right into the dock. I just started yelling, like, ayúdame, help me, like, help. And I'm telling the people, ambulancia, call an ambulance. And he's, at this point, like, he just looks like he's fading in and out of consciousness a little bit. I was just sitting there, you know, basically cradling him, holding him, not knowing if, like, he's breathing his last breath because of the amount of blood loss.
After nearly an hour, the ambulance team arrives to help Jonathan.
When the paramedics got there, they pulled me up to try to lay me onto the bed. And I'm like, I'm suffocating because I couldn't breathe. My tongue and everything was hanging. My airway's completely blocked off.
The communication barrier was definitely a problem.
And Travis, at the time, he didn't speak Spanish, and I had my jaw ripped off. I'm mumbling.
It's rush hour traffic, the middle of hotel zone. Everybody's getting off of work, and it's just bumper to bumper. The ambulance, it was crazy. He's rolling up onto the curb, going around traffic, the sirens blaring. I highly doubt this EMT had ever seen a case this severe with somebody having their face basically ripped off by a crocodile.
I saw my face completely destroyed in the mirrors of the ambulance. That's when I panicked. I started losing consciousness at that moment.
At their campsite in the Grand Canyon, Dennis Redmond makes the call. Though he doesn't realize his daughter was bit by a rattlesnake, he knows Allison needs immediate evacuation. Using a satellite beacon, they contact the canyon's emergency response center, which dispatches paramedics to the site.
So my dad was making sure that he could feel a pulse in my foot. And he had to dig his finger into my foot in order to find it. That's when I saw concern in his face, because he was like, well, it's there, but it's faint.
There's absolutely no question that a person has been envenomated once we see severe swelling and pain. Grand Canyon rattlesnakes have a really strong venom. It's full of different proteins that are going to be disrupting the blood clotting cascade that's going on in her foot, potentially disrupting blood flow to important tissues like ligaments and tendons. Meanwhile, there's also neurotoxins that are known to be present. There could be serious risks of her losing her ability to be able to breathe properly. When you're so far away from help and from antivenom treatment, which is the only way to treat a snake bite, this could be a serious, serious problem, both for her actual foot and also potentially for her life because of the neurotoxins.
It's been almost 24 hours since Allison's bite. The paramedic team arrives, but their helicopter can't land this deep in the canyon.
So they turn around and go back a couple miles to drop off the team. The team then has to do multiple crossings in the river in order to get to us. So once the paramedics got there, Megan, the paramedic, had informed me that she believed it was a rattlesnake bite. This is when the first moment of actual fear and panic actually set in. Just complete meltdown.
Finally, Allison realizes this was probably a rattlesnake. Snakebite specialists are going to tell you that the most important thing to do in the event of a rattlesnake envenomation is to seek medical treatment as quickly as possible. So the faster you get to the doctor to get the antivenom treatment, the better. All this time goes by with Allison, she's increasing the chances that there could be this long-term damage.
So the paramedics gave me an IV, and they start prepping to fully extract me from the canyon.
I'm trying to be calm, right? I'm trying to process all of this. But when your child is down, you have to have your facilities. I can feel it coming back. But you can't show it.
He's terrified, and it's all in his face. I didn't want to freak out. If I was freaking out, he wouldn't be able to handle it.
A few hours after a crocodile attack, Jonathan and Travis make it through rush hour traffic to the hospital.
They didn't know if I was going to make it because of all the trauma I had to my head, all the blood loss I have. My jaw was split in half. It comes from here all the way over here. This is where it's completely ripped off. And plus the bacteria from the crocodile, my brain was just swelling tremendously. When I woke up, I didn't know if I was going to be able to speak or anything, or if I was going to have brain damage. I had no idea. 17 days later, I woke up. They did such a fabulous job putting me together. My jaw wasn't wired shut.
I couldn't believe he looked as good as he did in that moment. So I was in shock seeing him. I thought he was going to be deformed for the rest of his life, like severely deformed. And so I was very surprised. They put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Back in the Grand Canyon, the clock is ticking. And with no place for the helicopter to land, they put Allison in a screamer suit in order to airlift her out of the canyon to higher ground.
So the helicopter came over. I was hooked in. Adam was hooked in. We get lifted off, and they have us dangling 150, 200 feet off the ground of the Grand Canyon.
Next time I saw her, she was flying stringing 150-foot rope or so down the Grand Canyon. I'm thinking, oh, jeez, what's happening here? And I'm looking up, and she's just slowly coming down the canyon.
In that moment, I was thinking to myself, this is a very bad situation, but this is pretty freaking cool. It's called a screamer suit because most people are very frightened by heights and will scream in it. And the whole time I was like, whee!
With Allison on her way to the hospital, the rest of the group hikes on to their next campsite. Dennis stays behind. He will hike out of the canyon and back to his daughter at sunrise.
There I am, 5 o'clock or so in the afternoon, 3/4 the way down the Grand Canyon. To my 30-year-old daughter. She's just been bitten by a rattlesnake. And when they're gone, it was just me, because everybody left. But that's when I broke down. I couldn't handle it. And then this is when I just said, okay, I gotta let this go. That's where it all comes together. Everything comes together. And thinking, oh my gosh, every minute counts now, and it's been 24 hours. What in the world decision was I making at this time? Why didn't I do this sooner? This could have detrimental effects.
When I was in the helicopter, the pain is like whenever your foot falls asleep, but instead of the pins and needles, it's more like chopsticks and acid, just searing, just like coming in from all sides.
20 hours in, the venom has probably caused some severe damage within her foot, depending on how much was initially injected. The swelling is also potentially leading to compartment syndrome. Compartment syndrome is a situation in which the swelling in certain parts of the foot or the affected limb can compress blood vessels and nerves in other parts of the foot, thereby leading to tissue death. And furthermore, the venom has probably moved through her lymphatic system throughout the rest of her body, where neurotoxins, if present, could be impacting her ability to breathe and other factors.
I arrive in Flagstaff. I get checked into ICU. There are people everywhere, people drawing all over me, poking me, prodding me, and I'm feeling safe. They're going to give me this antivenom. I'm gonna get better. So they administer it first with a micro drip. So gradually over the next 10 minutes, I'm feeling weird, kind of fuzzy and kind of heavy. I was just thinking that, oh, this is what antivenom feels like. It'll be fine. After the 10 minutes, they crank it up because they feel confident that I was safe. And within seconds, I start to go into an anaphylactic shock. My throat is starting to close up. My eyes, I can feel them heavy and swelling. I can start to see the skin around my eyes just swelling shut. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's it.
Poor Allison, the very thing that is designed to save her causes an allergic reaction within her body, which is relatively uncommon. It happens in maybe up to 3% maximum percent of patients, and she goes into anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock is when the body responds with an overreactive immune system to an allergen, in this case, some of the snake venom proteins, and goes into shock, meaning that the blood vessels dilate, her blood pressure drops, her throat swells up, and she has serious trouble breathing. So in fact, in her case, a lot of the things that in some people are caused by the venom were caused by the antivenom. And this may have been because she was allergic to some of the proteins that are in the antivenom.
Antivenom is made by injecting small amounts of venom into domestic animals like horses or sheep. The resulting antibodies are then collected and purified. Allison is allergic to horses, so it's possible that trace horse proteins in the antivenom caused her reaction. Back in the canyon, Dennis is getting updates from his wife.
When I got the word that she had, quote, an allergic reaction, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. You know, that is one of those moments, again, where you don't realize how much you love your children until you think they're in a position that they're not going to make it out alive. And it's one of those things that it's just, you think, how could it be any worse?
Doctors are able to stop the anaphylaxis, but without an effective treatment, the venom continues to spread throughout Allison's body.
They immediately call Phoenix Banner Hospital to see if they had the other brand of antivenom. Luckily, they do, and back on another helicopter to Phoenix, and they started all over again.
The next morning at first light, Dennis begins a solo trek out of the canyon. He never hiked so fast in his life.
When I left at 5:30 that morning, my intent was to get to the hospital. That was where I was going, and I wasn't stopping. And the whole time I'm getting some of these texts and things about what's going on. You know, they got her settled down, they got her shipped to Phoenix by helicopter, so I'm getting the updates.
This time, doctors in Phoenix administer Allison another antivenom.
They are made differently, different extractions, different antibodies. And one of them is made with horse antibodies, and one of them is made out of sheep or goat antibodies,
which she has no negative reaction to. Allison, her mother, and the medical staff breathe a huge sigh of relief.
I just shoot up the mountain, and I'm up at the top by noon the next day. By then, Allison's getting out of the hospital.
Thankfully, the second round of antivenom treatment is so successful, Allison is released from the hospital that afternoon.
So I jumped in my truck, threw everything in there, and then I just headed home. By the time I got there, she's there at home, sitting on the couch with her foot up. Oh, hi, Dad. Hi, Dad? Is that what you got to say? It was quite the journey.
Back in Houston, Jonathan Shoneman's recovery is nothing short of astounding.
When it was ripped apart, all my bones were together. That's why they were able to piece me back basically perfectly. And this is next to the carotid artery, but the doctors were just amazed that they could see it. If it would have been a millimeter over, it would have cut the vein. I would have died out like that.
Yes, Jonathan was in crocodile habitat, but something else we have to consider is in these very touristy areas, such as Cancun, there has been an increase of negative interactions between humans and crocodiles. And some of those negative interactions, it's because people are feeding crocodiles. These animals become habituated and they lose their fear of humans. With that loss of fear, they're more likely to be bold and aggressive, and that's when an attack can happen. A general rule, no matter where you go in the world, do not feed the wildlife, because you might enjoy having a nice selfie that you can put on social media, not realizing you get to leave and go back to your nice, safe home, and you have increased the danger of a particular community.
I need water in my life. Doesn't matter where it's at, I just want to be close to it. I have people talk to me, oh, I can't believe the crocodile, how could you be in the water? Well, really, it just made me stronger. My family, I promised them I'll never go spearfishing in the lagoon, and I kept that promise. I've been in there, swimming, but not spearfishing. So I've kept it pretty good.
After the rattlesnake bite, Allison faced months of physical rehabilitation just to walk again. But one question still remains. How did a group of such experienced hikers misdiagnose Allison's rattlesnake bite?
People are very reluctant to think that they could have been bitten by a rattlesnake unless they saw the snake. In reality, it can actually be really different. She's walking through brush, it's loud, raging river, she doesn't hear even the snake moving, she doesn't hear anything. And it happens so rapidly that it makes sense that Allison would never have even seen it. She would just say, hey, what was that? And then 10 steps later, that hurts a little bit. And then by the time she's really thinking, oh shoot, that could have been a rattlesnake, that snake is miles behind her.
According to Dr. Taylor, Allison likely wasn't the only one surprised by this encounter.
So imagine that you're a rattlesnake hanging out under the brush. Can't really see very well because you're covered in this brush. You have no ears. What you do have is a strong sense of smell and taste, and then you have this sense of vibration. I think it's definitely possible that because of this raging water, that the snake didn't have the opportunity to sense Allison's footsteps as she approached. The rattlesnake is sitting there quietly. Allison comes up, neither of them sensed the other one, and when she stepped on or near it, it bit to defend itself.
6 months later, Allison is nearly fully recovered with no intentions of letting this incident slow her down.
I'm back climbing, back practicing yoga, and I will be going back into the Grand Canyon in 2 weeks from this being filmed. I'm just psyched to give the canyon another go.
Less than a year after the bite, Allison returns to the Grand Canyon, completing one of its most difficult hikes, the Nankoweap Trail, with Dad by her side. But she will never forget how fortunate she is to be alive.
Just my luck, right? Me being allergic to antivenom and you getting bit by a rattlesnake in the Grand Canyon, both, I would have had better chances of winning the lottery.
It was supposed to be the father-daughter adventure, with friends, but sometimes life makes a little twist. So we have a whole new adventure to talk about and to share with people, say, you learn something from this, if you will.
I think this entire experience has definitely strengthened the bond between my father and I. He checks in more. He usually is a super fast hiker. He's usually leading the pack, like first one up at the summit. And now he hangs back a little bit when we're hiking together a little bit more than he used to. I like that.